Azealia Banks needs therapy. I mean, you know that, I know that. If you have the unfortunate privilege to ever know who she is or seen any of her, I don't know, Twitter tweets, I'm sorry for you. And me. So I don't know who she is, but I've seen this tweet. It's probably one of the dumbest, worst tweets. Well, honestly, probably like only in like the last week or so from a public figure. But I'm going to, as a psychologist, I'm going to break it down as to potentially what's kind of going on from the psychology perspective. If I saw this from a client and I would say, okay, let's break down what is wrong with all of this. So she starts off this insane tweet by saying fucking 14-year-old girls was really only made a social taboo in the 1990s. Now, besides that being wrong, I'm guessing what she is trying to imply is that a lot of public figures, I mean, they have gotten away and it was fairly normalized for them to just be hooking up with 16, 17-year-olds, 14-year-olds, Elvis, Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, there's a long list. It was taboo back then, sort of, right? Obviously, pedophilia is a bad thing. Obviously, everyone knows that. Well, not everyone knows that apparently because a lot of people do it, but it's always been a bad thing. But when you're a celebrity, people, I guess, let you get away with it a little bit more. People will use arguments like this, even though it's a little insane, as kind of an exaggerated defense where you can nitpick different select instances to kind of give evidence to your point. Even though for most people before the 90s, you know, yeah, fucking 14-year-old girls was not a good thing. But you can make select arguments to kind of make your point valid. And that's what a lot of people do nowadays because they just want to be right as opposed to I want to actually have a valid argument. Then she goes on to saying, my grandmother was born in 1927 and had her first child when she was 12. Now, that is obviously an insane statistic. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the past have had kids at a young age. Having a kid, her first child at 12, that's not normal. That is rape. It was not frowned upon back then. It was not encouraged back then. That was not that long ago, less than 100 years. Now, of course, it was not uncommon to see teenagers being pregnant back then, especially with war and everything. But at 12, that's just rape. But that's another insane argument that she uses to kind of prepare you to defend her point. So when people use insane examples or anecdotal examples to defend their point, they're already trying to dig their feet in a little deeper than allow themselves to have evidence kind of counteract what they're trying to say. This is still not even going into why she needs therapy. I mean, that is insane takes, but people do that all the time as like, you know, exaggerated, ballooned examples to defend their arguments, especially when the arguments have no weight to actually make any sense. Teenage pregnancy only became frowned upon with the rise of Jerry Springer, and I can also be honest about the fact that I was old enough to choose, seduce, and decide to fuck grown-ass men when I was 15. Now that is the part where you should have been doing therapy early on, especially at 15. Now that is also rape. When people say that, and people use this argument to defend young teenage boys that have been sexually abused by especially older women, the idea that somebody can choose, seduce, and decide to fuck a grown man, one, a 15-year-old is not going to have the power and authority to seduce a grown-ass man. That man is taking advantage of that teenager. If I had a client like this, I would assume that they have been conditioned to think that they are the one choosing to do this. And there's a few reasons why people, when they are teenagers and they are fucking grown men or women, good. So if people are being taken advantage of a teenager and you experience the cognitive dissonance of this is wrong, the grown man or woman is manipulating the mind of the teenager to decide that, hey, this is a good thing, this is proper. So they are challenging that cognitive dissonance where this is wrong, but it feels good, and they're trying to tell them that like you are the one choosing to do this, right? And that's abuse. Abusers do that all the time. They're saying, you were the one that is deciding to do this. You brought this upon yourself, et cetera, et cetera. And then from the mind of a teenager to not experience that dissonance and that maybe guilt and shame and the uncomfortable feeling of being raped, they decide that, you know what? I'm the one that is actually doing this. I do decide to do this. I am the one that is saying, this is a good thing. She goes on to defend that piece of trauma in her life that I don't really get why women are fronting like they weren't fucking 40-year-olds at 15. Like, it's trying to get other people to be like, hey, this was normal, right? I use this example a lot of times in therapy where I ask you, sometimes before you go to somebody else's house, like a friend's house or something, in your household, you have done things a certain type of way. Maybe one of those things was like your parents yelling at each other every time that there was, I don't know, something bad happening. You go to a friend's house, they forgot to do one of those chores, and you have an automatic reaction of tensing up because you are preparing for their mom or dad to yell, potentially beat your friend. And then it doesn't happen. You are now like, what's going on? It's normal in my house. It's normal for me to experience that. Why isn't this happening to you? A lot of the times, a lot of people that are then going to say that my experience is normal and appropriate, well, they will do the misery loves company aspect, where you find other people that experience that, so you have a way to normalize that experience. She continues to rationalize and justify her trauma, is what we call it. I'm honestly not surprised or mad at Trump for getting some 15-year-old pussy because those were the times. Once again, it is the justification in her mind that what I experienced, the trauma that I experienced, was normal. So when you don't get therapy for experienced childhood trauma, when you don't get therapy for experiencing childhood trauma, you will find ways, your body and your brain will find ways to justify why that trauma happened, right? And sometimes people do the opposite, where it just leads to kind of like an implosion, depression, anxiety, things like that. But more people that experience more volatile and antisocial behaviors and thoughts, they find ways to justify and rationalize the trauma that they experience. And they do things and they say dumb shit like this. He even goes to say, and this is another position, another little psychology twist to defend what she experienced. She goes on to say, now if he was fucking a 10-year-old, we have a problem. But if the girls were 13, who cares? Move on. So she puts these age limitations on the trauma that she experienced, and typically what I would assume in a case like that is around 13, that artificial age that she is putting on there is when she potentially started experiencing abuse. I don't know her. I'm just theorizing and speaking out loud of, if this was my client and I saw some shit like this, this is what I would be thinking. These are the red flags that I would be thinking. And that's why if you experience trauma as a child or a teenager, you need to go get some professional help, because it will bleed into the rest of your life, no matter what. You can suppress it for a while. Maybe it'll come out at 40, maybe it'll come out at 30, maybe it'll come out at 70. It'll come out. Hopefully it doesn't come out in an insane tweet like this, but most of the time your trauma will come out. And you need to go do therapy if you experienced something unfortunate like this. And she needs to go do some therapy, some serious therapy.